Hello, guys, and welcome. I'm joined by Gareth Blainey, who's a ex-BBC senior journalist. First of all, Gareth, how you doing, mate?
Hi, Harrison. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, obviously, the Welsh Open this week, this for the snooker. It's being played at the Celtic Manor Resort. Who's your favourite to win the tournament?
Well, I think there are a couple of players who have stood out so far. Ronnie O'Sullivan, you've got to include Ronnie O'Sullivan. I think he's won comfortably earlier this afternoon, 4-0 against Jimmy White. Judd Trump as well. It would be great, of course, to see a Welsh player do well at the home event. I mean, Mark Williams has just started his match now against Liam Highfield. It'd be great to see Mark having a good run at the tournament, or any Welsh player for that matter, because I've got to say it's been quite disappointing over the last few years, having to report on the lack of Welsh success at the event. You've got to go back to 2016 for a Welsh quarter-finalist when Michael White actually got to the last eight, and going way back to 1999 when a Welshman last won it. Yeah, I know, last century, amazing, isn't it? And that was Mark Williams. And it's actually great to see it being played at the Celtic Manor as well. It really looks an impressive venue for this event.
Yeah, it is a great place to have the event. Obviously, from a Welsh perspective, who would you say in the tournament's the Welsh talent and maybe could go far in the tournament?
Well, obviously Mark Williams, because he's got the experience, he's got the ability, he's got the pedigree. It would be really good to see Ryan Day pushing on, really, from just winning the shootout recently. That was a great boost for him because he'd really slipped down the rankings. He needs to push on from that now. It's been a bit disappointing, actually, so far today, because Matthew Stevens lost this morning against Stephen Maguire. No disgrace in that. Of course, Maguire's the world number 8. Jamie Jones lost in a deciding frame as well against Mark King. Jack Jones is through to the last 32. It would be great to see Dylan Emery do well tonight against Joe Perry. It's a really tough match for him, but great achievement so far from Dylan. Only 19, an amateur player, and he beat one of the top Chinese players, Lu Ning, yesterday. So that was great to see. And Dylan Emery showing really why he's so highly regarded as an amateur. We may see him as a professional in the future.
And is there any outsiders that maybe snooker fans could look out for that maybe aren't the favourites but could surprise a few people and go far in the tournament?
Yeah, you do tend actually to get players who are not such familiar names doing well at this tournament, certainly getting to the latter stages, the quarterfinals or the semi-final stages. You've got to look really at some of the players from China. I noticed that Zhao Guodong has had a couple of decent results. He's one maybe to look out for. Joe O'Connor as well. He's having a decent run so far at this tournament. He's had a good run at the Welsh Open in the past, actually. So that's what makes it, of course, so interesting to follow. It's not all the top names who were doing well. But going back to what I was saying at the beginning, I think maybe you're looking at somebody like Judd Trump, who, rather interestingly, has never won the event. He's a runner-up in 2017, but he's never actually won this tournament. You could maybe consider Trump as a possible winner. He's almost a local player, of course, because he comes from Bristol, just over the bridge. And the likes of Ronnie O'Sullivan. You wouldn't discount somebody like John Higgins either, really, given his experience. He's won this event more than any other player. And hopefully somebody like Mark Williams or any Welsh player.
And what about Sean Murphy, obviously, defending champion? Do you think he still has a chance?
Yeah, obviously Sean Murphy. I mean, he would be the opponent. He would be Ryan Day's opponent actually in the next round. So obviously, from a Welsh point of view, we'd like to see Ryan Day go further. But yeah, I mean, Sean Murphy did really well last year. Very impressive. Run to the title last year, and a comprehensive win in the final against Kyron Wilson as well.
And obviously, keeping the topic of Welsh sport, obviously Wrexham have, as everyone knows, Wrexham have completed a takeover with Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Robert Kenley. What's your thoughts on this takeover?
Well, I'm a Wrexham fan, so I'm pretty pleased about it. I've got to say, I'm still pinching myself a bit about this because when I first heard about it, I just thought, is this right? There's something odd about this. Is this all going to just crumble and all this talk about takeover is going to come to nothing? But no, they seem to be genuinely behind the club. They've already invested money in the club, and they just seem to have taken to Wrexham because I suppose, in the National League, it stands out, doesn't it, as a club which has had, a great, proud history in the Football League over so many years. Great stories from the FA Cup, giant killing against Arsenal, of course, in 1992. I read somewhere, actually, that they were both interested, or they considered Macclesfield, who, of course, was strapped for cash. But they went for Wrexham because the club's history. It's one of the oldest clubs in the world. And as I say, I suppose it stands out because it's in Wales as opposed to England. And really, I'm just, obviously as a fan, I'm really hoping that Wrexham can get back into the Football League. But I think from a general perspective, from a general Welsh perspective, it would be good if we had a North Walian club in the Football League, and it was great, obviously, to see Newport getting back into the league back in 2013, and they've pushed on from that. It would be great to see Wrexham back there as well.
Obviously, you mentioned there, like, where do you see the club in, maybe what's the short-term goals you think, and then for the owners and for the club, and maybe in 5 to 10 years' time?
Well, the short-term goal is to get back into the league, isn't it? It's proved so difficult for Wrexham. They've come so close. They lost to Newport, of course, in the playoff final in 2013, and they've been very close on other occasions as well. So to get back into the league would be a massive boost to Wrexham, a massive boost to the fans as well, because they do have a decent fan base up there, a very devoted fan base in Wrexham and in the surrounding areas. Moving on from that, then, you would like to see them moving up the divisions. Certainly, I don't know, is Championship football, is that pie in the sky? Or so much depends on obviously how much money will be invested in the club. It's not simply a case of money, of course. They've got to get the right balance of players. This is a very, very difficult division to get out of. I don't think they're under any illusions about that, because it's only the top team that goes through that gets promoted automatically, of course. That's proved to be the problem for Wrexham over so many seasons. But short-term Football League status, that has got to be the ambition.
And obviously, the Hollywood Stars have come out and said that one of on their list of priorities, they want to try and expand the Kop and in the ground. Do you think this is necessary?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's been a topic of debate among supporters, given the history of the club. That would be great to see. Yeah, purely from a supporter's point of view, that would be great to see an expansion of the stadium. I'm not being biased now as a Wrexham fan, but the stadium is a very impressive venue for a non-league club. It's a much better ground than a lot of the lower league clubs' grounds in the lower divisions. Any sort of, I think, any expansion of the ground would be marvellous to see. And obviously, if Wrexham were to go on to Football League status and were to be more and more successful, then there would be more of a reason for it, wouldn't there? In terms of accommodating extra fans,
And being a fan yourself, do you think, with them being Hollywood Stars, do you think the ownership now, do you think that it'll attract more fans to Wrexham?
I think so, yeah. Somebody of Ryan Reynolds is sort of, fame. This is the bizarre thing about it. You do wonder, you sort of think, look twice at the story and think, well, why are they getting involved? What's in it for them? But they seem to have money to spare, which from Wrexham's point of view is great to hear, But I think, given their profile, both of them, they're both pretty major names, aren't they? I think, it will attract interest, certainly.
And changing the topic a little bit, what's it like being a reporter in lockdown now?
Well, I'm having a bit of a break at the moment. I've sort of semi-retired, but it has been quite challenging over almost the last year or so, because I was working for the BBC from home from more or less the start of lockdown in March. And we're talking about snooker. I actually covered the World Championship from home. Rather than go to Sheffield, which was a really strange experience. It did actually work, and really, we're now talking over Zoom, aren't we? You do wonder where we would be without Zoom, because without Zoom, I wouldn't have been able to do it. The World Snooker, the media team on World Snooker were very, very helpful. They simply set up a Zoom link, so I could interview players after matches over Zoom, much as I would have done, had I been sitting next to them in Sheffield. And it was a case really of adapting to that. But it's great, isn't it? The strides that have been made in technology, even over the last 2 or 3 years, and that we're all now just taking this for granted, aren't we? That we can record stuff like we're doing now, or we can just talk to people over Zoom. We can record obviously on video, we can record audio, we could, and it does work really, really well, Obviously there's the odd hitch now and again, but most of the time it works really, really effectively.
Yeah, you mentioned the importance of Zoom, like Zoom calls and online calls. Then, do you think potentially, like, remote working could be here to stay?
I think you've got to seriously consider that, haven't you? Because although thankfully the situation now with COVID-19 is slowly improving, I think it's may well have changed the way we're going to work forever. And I think people are going to have to rely far more on working from home if it's possible to do it. It's a massive change, isn't it? It's a massive change in terms of our social lives, and obviously you miss the camaraderie of being in an office with friends and colleagues. But obviously safety is of paramount importance, isn't it? Everybody's safety. And I think really this may well be the way forward now.
What impact do you think remote working's had on journalism?
It's forced everybody, really, hasn't it, to adapt and to sort of rethink really their working patterns. I think it showed people really how much can be done working remotely. It's not ideal, obviously. You're far more reliant as well in terms of communication with people on email, on phone calls. But I think in a way, it's helped people. I think it's given a lot of people a more confidence in terms of what they can do. In terms of working with technology, because certainly to people like me, who are maybe getting on a bit in terms of age, you do, when you get older, you get a little bit more skeptical and a little bit more concerned about technology. But it does, I became more confident, certainly over the last year or so. I've become much more confident with using Zoom. I've got to be honest, when I was first asked to record an interview on Zoom, I was thinking, oh, right, okay, how do I do that? Is it going to work properly? All this sort of thing, But once I'd done the first interview and I started to get to grips with it, I feel pretty comfortable with it now. So I think in that sense, it's a good thing.
As you said, you've had major experience in this industry. How do you think, obviously the past year, journalism's changed a lot from, to remote working, but how do you think journalism's changed in the last 10 to 15 years?
Well, yeah, the technology is a major part of how things have changed. I think another huge change I've noticed, not so much in the industry I work in, the broadcasting industry, but there's obviously now much more of an emphasis on online in general. I mean, yeah, that applies to the BBC as well, actually. We've given, as the BBC, much more prominence to work online and the importance of getting stuff out there online. I mean, it used to be the case in my early years at the BBC, it was always the policy, get a story out or get any information out as quickly as possible. And the quickest way possible would be via the radio. Get a reporter on the radio or get a reporter on TV. With the emergence of online, that's changed a lot now, of course. And of course, you've got Twitter now as well. And there's much more of an emphasis on getting stuff out there onto Twitter, online, because quite simply, people can access those more easily than they can their radio or their TV, particularly if they're out and about. Obviously, if they're driving, or if they're out of the house. Obviously, it hasn't applied so much over the last year, but I think over the last couple of years, there's been certainly a bit of a change in terms of the emergence of online. I'm not saying at the expense of radio or TV, but it's certainly now considered as something to use to get information out there as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on, Gareth. It's been really, really good to get an insight into, the snooker, obviously being a Wrexham fan, and, how journalism's changed in the last, especially over the last year.
No problem at all. You're welcome.
Gareth.